What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today it is Lazy Daze Channel and I'm back at it again with some more history reaction for you guys today, and I am doing some more Kings and Generals content for you, but it is the last part of episode 1, the early Muslim expansion, and I am really looking forward to finding out how this series ends and getting on to some more Middle Eastern history after this as well. If you guys haven't already, head over to Kings and Generals page. A link is in the description box down below. They're making some amazing content and I'm really enjoying this series as well. If you guys are enjoying my reaction, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but we are just going to jump straight into this one.
At this point in this story, we have to leave the Syrian front, as things have started heating up in Iraq.
Right.
In the aftermath of the decisive victory at the Battle of the Bridge, Persian forces made no move to capitalize on it, either hoping that the attack was over, or being preoccupied with other matters. This gave Caliph Umar time to come up with a response. Lacking an immediate source of manpower, the pragmatic Rashidun Caliph raised another army from the previously untapped tribes who rebelled against the Caliphate during the Ridda Wars, including the Banu Tamim and Banu Jadila. These warriors, supplemented by additional contingents mustered by Umar, were gathered and sent north, but problems were still present. Quarreling between many of the tribal chiefs prompted the Caliph to appoint a trusted paragon to supreme command, who was absolutely beyond reproach. After being talked out of leading the army himself, Umar's commander would be Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, the 7th person to embrace Islam and a companion of the Prophet. The presence of such a respected general united the army in spirit. Additionally, many more warriors joined themselves to Sa'd's invasion force as it marched north up the Medina-Hira road in May of 636. By the time it reached the Euphrates region for a second time, the Muslim army was probably the most formidable Persia had faced so far. Unfortunately for Sa'd, resistance to his advance was soon in coming. The best Sassanid general, Rostam, who basically ruled the court of the 12-year-old Shah Yazd
I can't believe they're taking on the Byzantines and the Sassanids at the same time.
Wanted to fight smaller battles to minimize risk. But that decision was unpopular with the nobles and commoners alike, as the Battle of the Bridge probably made the empire complacent. Therefore, the general departed the Persian capital at the head of a massive imperial force, beelining straight for the Muslims encamped near Qadisiyah. The two opposing armies finally caught sight of one another across the span of the Al-Atiq Canal, about 30 miles east of Hira. After an exhausting march in the midst of Iraq's blistering summer, Rostam ordered his men to take up positions and encamp across from Sa'd's army. Rather than immediately mounting an assault across the canal, the bulk of both armies remained on their own side of the waterway for several months, with the peace only punctuated by small scouting missions and raids. Rostam probably knew that the previous Islamic army had been defeated during a botched river crossing, and was therefore content to wait and receive Sa'd's attack, hoping it would happen again. The Muslims, meanwhile, were fighting a two-front war, so keeping the Mesopotamian army passive for the time being was prudent. In Syria, their army was engaged against the Romans in a campaign which culminated in mid-August at the Battle of Yarmouk. With the Christian Empire's war machine broken, Umar was free to dispatch reinforcements to Sa'd's force. In the hope of keeping Rostam occupied, the Muslim leader sent repeated embassies to treat with his Persian counterpart, demanding that the Zoroastrians submit to Islam in return for peace. With the Sassanid commander unwilling to convert, and reinforcements streaming into their camp, the Muslims challenged their enemy to battle, arraying their forces in formation and allowing the Sassanids to cross the canal, withdrawing a mile to the rear. With the Al-Atiq Canal bridge occupied by Muslim guards, Rostam's Imperial Army spent the night hours damming the waterway with debris to enable passage. At dawn, Rostam, seated on his throne, ordered his army across and had the army advance in battle formation against the arrayed Muslim forces. The climactic struggle for Persia was about to begin. The army under the authority of Rostam Farrukhzad was likely made up of, at most, 60,000 Sassanid troops. Even a Sassanid field army at the absolute apex of the empire's power probably would not have been able to muster such massive numbers, and it is even more unlikely that the politically divided, militarily exhausted realm of 628 onwards could bring to bear anything more than 60,000. Rostam's bulwark was also a multi-ethnic army, having come together from regions all across the vast expanse of the territory ruled by the House of Sassan, from Azerbaijan to Khorasan. It included among its ranks Kurds, Armenians, Turks, Arabic allies, and units from many other peoples. The right and left center units of the Imperial Army were under the command of Jalinus and Birzan respectively, and in total comprised 30,000 warriors, 20,000 melee infantry and bowmen in the first line, and 10,000 cavalry in the second. Among these troops were 10,000 professionally trained Persian immortals, revered elite fighters who chained themselves together as a signal to the enemy that they were prepared to die rather than retreat. Bounded by swampland which was difficult to traverse, the Sassanid left and right wings were led by Miran and Hormuzan, both illustrious generals drawn from high-born Persian clans. Each led 10,000 infantry in their front rank, backed by 5,000 cavalry behind. In front of Rostam's line was a screen of 33 mail-clad elephants. 18 of them were deployed in the center, while the remainder were split equally on either wing. Rostam himself, donning ornate armor, mounted his raised throne just behind the center, accompanied by a small strategic reserve. About a mile to the west, Saad's 30,000 warriors drew up in a manner that mirrored their adversaries.
Is that all they've got?
Tribally organized divisions, with infantry in the first line and cavalry in the second. In addition to the Muslim forces from Arabia proper, Christian Arabs from the border of Sassanid territory, and even some captured Persian officers had joined the army after converting to Islam. Although Saad bin Abi Waqqas was capable of deploying his army properly, ailments and injury prevented him from mounting a horse and exercising effective tactical control. Instead, the companion general appointed a trusted deputy, Khalid bin Afuta, to carry out his immediate orders, and took up a strategic position atop the fortress of nearby Uzayb. The various units were commanded by their tribal chieftains, and included men such as Shirabil bin Simt, a veteran of the Ridda Wars and Syrian campaign, who led the Muslim left wing. As Rostam's large army continued to form up, Muslim soldiers took part in their usual noon prayer, donned their armor, and waited. By the early afternoon hours, the massive Persian army was finally ready to fight. Rostam's plan was simple and to the point: smash both flanks of the enemy army, and then smash into their exposed center. The Battle of AlKadisia began with a heavy barrage of arrows loosed by the Sassanid archers, whose superior bows and higher quality arrows inflicted massive casualties on their lightly armored counterparts. The Muslims attempted to return the favor, but their low-powered bows and inferior arrows resulted in the missiles bouncing harmlessly off the Persian heavy armor. The amused Sassanid troops mocked the Muslim archers by repeating the word "spindles, spindles," as the impotent arrows fell harmlessly. With most of the Islamic front line pinned in place by Rostam's lethal storm of arrows, the general ordered a 7-strong elephant corps on his left to lead a charge directly at the Muslims opposing him, followed by the rest of the troops. Frightened by the oncoming Titans, the Rashidun mounts forced their riders to scatter from their position, leaving the infantry exposed. Beset by Miran's flank and lacking cavalry support, the Muslim warriors fell back slowly, suffering casualties but not breaking under the assault. Saad, witnessing the danger his right flank was in from Uzayb, had 2 units of cavalry from the unengaged center dispatched to reinforce and shore up the line. One of these contingents struck Mihran's troops in the front, while the other hit them in the flank, pushing the Persians back to their starting position after a fierce fight. Observing that his attack on the Muslim right was stalling, Rostam completely changed tack. He dispatched part of his immediate reserve under Bahman to keep that part of the Muslim army locked in place, then ordered the Sassanid right and right center to advance, fronted by elephants and covered by another deadly volley of arrows. Again, the vanguard of elephants panicked Rashidun mounts and forced the horsemen to flee for infantry cover. This state of affairs could not continue if victory for Islam was to be attained. Sa'd, realizing he had to do something about the Sassanids' assault beasts, had orders conveyed that light troops from the Arabian Bani Tamim tribe deal with them. Darting in and amongst the massive elephants with considerable skill and daring, the agile warriors cut the cables which kept the elephants' mounting platforms atop the animals, and showered the occupants with missile fire. A vast number of the isolated elephant riders were killed where they stood, while the rest led their exhausted war mounts back behind the main Persian line. The general Sassanid attack on this side of the field was also wrestled back. In an attempt to take advantage of his enemy's lack of elephants, Sa'd ordered a general attack all across the front. It is said that while the Sassanids were equipped better than their foe, the Muslims were superior fighters. This level of skill allowed a unit in Sa'd's center to punch through the Persian line and get close to the enthroned Rostam. Descending from his position, the general drew his sword and entered the fray personally along with some retainers. With the army's morale bolstered by the presence of their leader, the Muslim counterattack was repelled and the front re-established. By nightfall, the last of the day's fighting had come to an end. This first dreadful day, also known as the Day of Disorder by the battered Rashidun warriors, was over. The wounded were gathered and cared for by women in the Muslim camp and trained surgeons of the Sassanid army, while the remainder rested. When dawn came, both armies once again lined up for battle, facing off until mid-morning. At around noon, 1,000 reinforcements from Syria under Keka bin Amr began streaming onto the field to reinforce the Muslim army, coming 10 at a time so as to give the illusion of vast numbers. This increased the morale of the Muslim army tenfold, and Sa'd immediately ordered another charge all across the line. Despite the heavy casualties that his troops inflicted on the Sassanids, the enemy ranks remained coherent and unbroken, mainly due to the force of their heavily armored cavalry. Casualties increased as the fighting grew more and more brutal, but after 2 hours of fruitless fighting, both sides pulled back. The Muslims were trading well, 4 dead Persians for each of their own, which Rostam, trusting in his superior numbers, was content to grind.
Four Persians for each Muslim warrior. That number is insane.
Sa'd's force into the dust. On the Muslim side, Kaka, displaying his energetic and restless nature, used the break-in fighting to cover the camels that the Rashidun army brought with wooden structures, making them look to the untrained eye of a horse like unfamiliar, terrifying beasts.
No way!
When fighting resumed not long after, the disguised camels were paraded in front of the charging Persian cavalry,
make them run away.
Into breaking.
Genius! That's so smart. That's sick. That is fucking sick.
Ranks. Sensing an advantage, Sa'd had the army attack along the entire front again. This time, without elephants or cavalry to bolster their ranks, zealous Muslim warriors scythed into the Persians' units, viciously routing many of them towards the waterway behind, and almost causing the entire Sassanid army to buckle with the shock. However, Rostam's personal intervention and unmoving confidence allowed his shattered contingents to get back into the fight. Throughout the evening hours, Persian and Rashidun troops engaged in a slogging match, which, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, managed to painstakingly throw the Muslims into retreat.
Oh
With
no,
that,
not again.
both exhausted armies retired for the night. When daylight came on the third day, and the armies were arraying for battle, Saad's troops were met with an unwelcome surprise. The enemy ranks parted briefly, and through them marched the mighty elephants, recovered and rearmed, now each surrounded by a protective ring of infantry and cavalry. When
How are we going to get over this?
Rostam had his archers unleash another extended arrow volley, which locked the Muslims in place. As this barrage concluded, the entire Sassanid army, fronted by the terrifying elephants, began inexorably trudging onward. Suddenly, as they approached Saad's line, the infantry shielding each elephant's front shifted aside according to plan, enabling the giant war beasts to crash into the Muslim line at close range. The riders were able to escape and fled without delay, but the infantry weren't so lucky. Saad's entire army was brutally shoved back, losing hundreds of men who were gored by tusks, crushed by the elephant's feet, or put to the sword by Persian arms. Rostam caught the smell of blood in the water. In order to end the battle, he sent a cavalry division on a deep flanking attack against Uzayb Castle itself, but this was rapidly countered by a unit of Muslim riders. Although that attempt failed, the army of Islam was visibly about to disintegrate, despite the coming of even more reinforcements from the west. Taking advice from a defective Persian soldier at the last possible moment, Rashidun light infantry slid through the ranks, surrounded the two lead elephants, and blinded them, before swarming the creatures and their onboard missile troops. With the elephant alphas killed, other beasts along the line were overwhelmed and killed in the same manner. Many others, driven into a rage by pain and unable to see through mutilated eyes, turned 180 degrees and stampeded towards the canal, crashing through the Persian ranks and disordering Rostam's army. Saad ordered yet another full-scale assault, impacting upon the Sassanids with devastating force. AlKadisia was devolving into a war of attrition. Not even darkness on the day of hardship brought the fighting to an end, but the soldiers' sheer exhaustion gradually led the troops to disengage at sunrise the next day. Both armies seemed to be at breaking point, but it still wasn't clear who the victor would be. As both armies rested, Kaka decided to make a decisive move. Under the cover of a brief sandstorm, he and 700 troops launched an attack on the blinded Persian center, breaking through the line and approaching Rostam. Isolated and disoriented, the Sassanid general was found by a Rashidun soldier and slain. Fighting continued.
Mate, the Muslim army have done so many good assassinations in the middle of a fight.
Until rumors of their commander's fate spread around the Persian army. At that point, the center finally cracked and routed towards the river, followed shortly after by both flanks. The Imperial Army of the Sassanid Empire had been defeated. The Sassanids lost more than 20,000, while the Muslim losses were less than 10,000. Although the Muslims seemingly scored decisive victories against two of the strongest empires of the period, the war in the region was hardly over. The next episodes of this series on early Muslim expansion will take us to Egypt, Constantinople, Central Asia, Spain and France, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button.
I have done both of those things, and if you guys haven't already, there's a link in the description box down below, so you can go head over to Kings and Generals page and do the same thing. I really enjoyed this, and I'm definitely looking forward to finding out what happens in the next episode. This was really good. I'm glad we've got episode 1 now done, so this is part 5 of episode 1 all over and done with, and we will have episode 2 next. What a great ending to this video. It was a long one, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I've learned a bit more. So if you guys have any other suggestions, drop it in the comments box down below. If you guys are enjoying my content, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but I will catch you in the next video.